What are your thoughts on returning to Norman as the opponent, so play at a place that you and your family spent a lot of years?
I think our focus is, or at least my focus is, I mean, it's not a normal game. I'm not going to sit here and say that. Uh, it's a place that our family spent 12 years, a lot of dear friends. Um, we had a lot of dear friends that have passed away too. And actually, that's kind of what I thought of at first was um, Kyle Leisher, uh, Gary Purcell, Toby Keith. You know, um, Gary and Kyle were my neighbors. I mean, they were my buddies. We spent a lot of time with those guys, and they're gone now. Um, and then the players, there's still a lot of people there on staff that were there, and are still there. A lot of the coaches, I had the good fortune to coach with Bob Stoops, Hall of Fame football coach, Sherry Cole, Hall of Fame women's basketball coach, and Patty Gasso, Hall of Fame women's softball uh, coach. We were all on the same staff. Um, you know, Donnie Duncan, Steve Owens, and Joe Castiglione were my bosses. But the relationship with the players trumps all that. That's what I've heard from a lot of them, and that's the part of it. But the key is not let that distract you from the main goal of going on this trip. We have a basketball game to play. It's about the players, and I understand you guys haven't asked that, and rightfully so. But for me, we're coming to the end of a season, and we're trying to play the best we can.
Thank you, Chris. We'll go to Greg Bailey with KTRK TV. Greg, please go ahead.
Coach, this is a bit of a milestone, for the media perspective, as you look at your relationship over the years with people like Quantas and Hollis. What do those relationships mean to you, and what role do they play in the remarkable success that you've achieved here at U of H?
Well, when I took the job here, Hollis was finished. Hollis had a great pro career, playing all over the world. He had a cup of coffee with some NBA teams, played summer league, all that stuff. But this was a kid that was a Big 12 Player of the Year. He was a first-team All-American. He's a Wooden Award finalist, one of the top players in the country. Nick Collison, David West, Dwayne Wade, TJ Ford, and Hollis Price. That was a first-team All-American team that year. I'm not talking about our conference or first-team All-District. I'm saying All-American. And I stay in touch with a lot of my former players. So when Hollis called me and his career was ending, he wanted to Eduardo Nájera, who played for me at Oklahoma, was the head coach for the Dallas Legends. I think that was the name of their team, their G League team. I think back then it was called D League, actually. The G League team. And Hollis was helping Eduardo, and he called me and I said, "You know what, Hollis? I think my press conference was on April 3rd or 4th, something like that. This was the day after." And I said, "You know what, Hollis, why don't you just come over here and work for me? Let's work together." Because about that time, I was starting to get a bunch of calls from Houston kids that were born and raised here that went to school, whether it was at Duke or North Carolina, Arizona, Michigan, UCLA, great players that went on their careers were ending, and they were calling, asking me for an opportunity. They wanted to be on the staff. And that's when I said, I'm going to hire my guys, because if I don't hire my guys, who will? And so I hired Quantas called me when I got the job and said, Coach, I sure love to work for you one day. And we made that happen. But the two most important hires I've made here is Kellen and Lauren. And they both graduated from Oklahoma. So I have 4 Oklahoma graduates on my staff. So this place has a special meaning to all of us that either worked or played or graduated from there. So we met some lifelong friends, dear friends. Some of Karen's best friends are from Norman, Oklahoma. But we also know that this is our next game. And we've always been a next game program. We've always focused on that, and that's what we'll do with this one.
Thank you, Greg. We'll go to Joseph Duarte from the Houston Chronicle. Joseph, please go ahead.
Good morning, Kelvin.
Good morning, Joseph.
Kelvin, yesterday, as you told us after the game that the guys were going to have yesterday off. This time of year, days like that, how important is it to utilize it to the max with treatment? Just get them away from things, because you're not going to have a lot of those here in the next month or so.
Yeah, I think it's critical for a lot of reasons. It's the season is a grind. It's whether you're winning or losing, such a long season, and everything changed about 15 years ago. There's a lot of the younger coaches doesn't remember that the season used to start September with workouts and conditioning, weight room, and start practice October 15th. But now that's been extended to June, and coaches have had to be smarter on how the workloads you put on teams. I thought more about rest and time off these last few years than at any point in our career. It's one of the reasons why when we did our remodel, we put a recovery room in there so our kids could always have a place to go and rest and not have to go back and forth from where they're living, whether it's the dorms or an apartment, and have to come back. They could spend that time with extra rest. So I think we've done a good job with rest, keeping our kids off their legs. But that doesn't mean you're not going to have injuries. Injuries are the tough, unfortunate side of all athletics. But Jamal, LJ, Emmanuel, Juan, Javier, our starting group were all in training room yesterday. JoJo, Malik, Damian. They all have some kind of maintenance. John gives me an injury report every morning. Normally he comes up to the office and we go one by one, who's on what meds, who's getting what treatment. And I always make sure, John's so well respected from our kids that we don't have to worry about it. I just don't like him being late for anything, because I think it's part of our culture, is doing everything right off the floor, whether it's going to class, turning your assignments in on time. It's just part of our culture. But you bring up a good point, Joseph. That's important this time of year for everybody.
Thank you, Joseph. We'll go to Chris Baldwin with Paper City Houston. Chris, please go ahead.
Hey, Kelvin.
Hey, Chris.
How do you create, low turnover teams, teams that value the ball as much as yours do? Is it what you emphasize, practice? How do you do that year after year?
You just answered the question. It's an emphasis. Probably the highest turnover guys are usually your point guards. because they have the ball in their hands the most in high school or at AAU. Nobody turned the ball over more than Dejan Giroux and Jamal Shead, though. Jamal would have eight assists, and everybody would go, wow. I said, well, he had 7 turnovers. Did you see that? And so on Mondays, we have our individual workouts planned. This is in the summer. So Mondays, we have our individual workouts planned throughout the day. Tuesdays, our position workouts planned during the day. Wednesdays is a free day. We don't do anything with our team on Wednesdays in the off season. But most of them come in, and we have 2 guns in the practice facility. They're usually come in and work that. But Thursdays is we play 4-on-4, and I call it no turnover Thursdays, which are turnovers starting in June. I do not like turnovers. Most guys turn their ball over because they make dumb decisions. They stuff that they got away with in high school. If you were to dig under the covers at these kids' statistics coming out of high school, make sure you look at their turnovers. Jamal Shead in the month of October probably set a Guy V. Lewis practice court record for most turnovers per possession. Dejan Giroux, he was more likely to throw it up against a tuba horn than he was to a teammate. But there's nothing that happens in basketball that there has not been an emphasis on. Kids are individuals. They do things individually because they're all the best player on their team, and usually the best player in their area or the player of the year. All these kids that we're recruiting come from very talented backgrounds. So Fabian played with Carson Edwards in high school at Atascocita. When I went to see Fabian play, I never got to see him shoot a shot because Carson mostly shot all the balls. So for him, we had to project how we could, because we liked Fabian. He was an undersized 5-man that didn't shoot outside the free throw line. And that was only because he's shooting free throws. But there was something about him. There's an evaluation process in this that we do where we like guys. But most of the point guards that we recruit are high turnover guys. And that's usually by design because there's no repercussion. The coach can't say a whole lot to him because he's the best player. He has to have the ball in his hands. He's going to throw it away sometime. But when they get here, that stuff stops.
Thank you, Chris. We'll go back to Chris Gardner with Houston Roundball Review. Chris, please go ahead.
Coach, is JoJo's ankle issue, I guess, long-term? And if it is, could that mean more minutes for Sedlot?
Possibility. We're still evaluating that, but that's a possibility.
Thank you, Chris. We'll go to Mason Young with the Tulsa World. Mason, please go ahead, sir.
Hey, Coach, you mentioned at the top of this, obviously a lot of the relationships that you still have in Norman, and you also talked about some of the people you've lost. You mentioned Toby Keith, and obviously the OU community lost Ryan Miner recently. Just how much did those 2 relationships in particular mean to you?
Well, Ryan hit hard because we had a great first year at Oklahoma. I think we were undefeated at home. I think we went 15-0 that year, beating everybody in the Big 8 plus Texas. And he was our best player. I can't tell you how many times I thank Billy Tubbs for leaving Ryan Miner because we wouldn't have won without him. And then I also inherited a point guard in John Notches and some other guys on that team. But Ryan was the star. We built our offense around Ryan, but there was not anything in the game of basketball that he wasn't good at. And I had a great relationship with Ryan. When I was in the NBA in the offseason, my wife Karen and I have a home in Charlotte, North Carolina, and that's where I would go. and Ryan was coaching the Delmarva Shorebirds. Their rookie league or I can't remember what league they were in, rookie league or A league. And I'd been talking to Ryan, he replaced Cal Ripken Jr. at third base with the Baltimore Orioles. He got drafted by Philadelphia 76ers. Everybody in Oklahoma knows Ryan's story. But when Ryan was the coach of the Delmarva, that's Delaware and Maryland, I think is the play with the words there. They came to Kannapolis to play a ball game. And it must have been 100 degrees because the game started, I think, at 7. But Ryan wanted me to be there at 4 because they were taking batting practice, and he wanted me to speak to his team. And the least I can do. I owed a lot to Ryan. So Karen and I drive from Charlotte, Kannapolis. That's probably about 45 minutes. And there's nobody there. It's a minor league ballpark, mostly bleachers. Hotter than Hades. And there was Ryan, 6'7", about 250. And I said, I wonder how many of these kids knew he was an All-American basketball player. That he had 30-some against Kansas when his team beat him when they were ranked #1 in the nation. Player of the year in the old Big 8. But, just unassuming country boy from Hammond, Oklahoma, Ryan Miner. I remember going out to center field. Behind the center field fence was the clubhouse. And there was just a normal table that you would fold up with 4 legs and just sit it on the floor. And on top of that, there was no tablecloth or any of that. It was just 3 or 4 jars of Skippy peanut butter, an open loaf of white bread, and a jar of grape jelly. That's all they were eating. And Ryan was joking around. He said, "Coach, you want a peanut butter and jelly sandwich?" I actually wanted one. So I dug in. I had my old peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Karen was waiting for me back at the bleachers by herself. But as I was talking to the team, I looked at Ryan, and you just have all these flashbacks of who he is, and what he represents. One thing I noticed about getting old is you cry more. When I was younger, that didn't happen, but byproduct of being almost 69, I guess. But yeah, my neighbor lived 2 doors down was Kyle Leisher, and he was our team dentist, my golfing buddy. And then right across the street was a federal judge, Gary Purcell. So all these relationships were important to me, but you start thinking about your 12 years there, and those things inevitably will come into my mind. But I'm excited for the Oklahoma fans to see Hollis and Quantas and Kellen and Lauren, because that's where they spent their formative years. Kellen and Lauren's hometown. They say, "Where are you from?" They would say Norman, Oklahoma. That's their school, and that's their town, and they're proud of it. There's nobody that follows Oklahoma football on Saturdays more than Kellen. He wears these kids out about Oklahoma and the Sooners, and Kellen and Quantas and Lauren are right there with him. So they dominate the staff meetings on Saturdays or practice when we play. But Yeah, all those things, just brings your emotions out. Um, but like I said, we got a basketball game Saturday night. We're in the middle of finishing this season up with an unbelievable group of kids, and I've known Porter for a long time. Oklahoma's so lucky to have him as their coach. He's one of the best coaches in the country, and it should be a good game.
Thanks, Coach. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mason. We got time for a few more. We'll go back to Chris Baldwin, please. Chris, go ahead.
Kelvin, was putting in your culture at Oklahoma different, considering you had more talent than, when you took over at Washington State or here for sure? Is that a different process?
Talent has nothing to do with culture. Nothing. Culture is a how you do things on a daily basis, based around build upon a foundation of discipline. It's how you practice. It's how you treat other people. It's how you do anything. Is how you do everything when you build a culture. It's the entire coaching staff being there at 6:15 for a 6:30 workout, and the players notice that the coaches are always on time. That every workout, all the coaches are there together, and the players are held accountable for all those things. And then when which inevitably they will screw up in June and July, they're held accountable. I don't let them get away with any of that stuff. I did that at Oklahoma. I can't remember. Oklahoma guys will remember this better than me. That first year in the Big 8 at Oklahoma, I don't remember where we were picked. I think the best teams were Kansas and Oklahoma State, Missouri. I'm sure we were probably picked to finish 5th or 6th or 7th, maybe something like that. But that was a great culture team that first year. It was tough. It's always tough inheriting a program. But the difference in Oklahoma and Houston inheriting the program was Billy Tubbs. I was replacing a legend, one of the great college coaches of all time. So it was there. It was just put on pause. And all I did was hit the play button.
Thank you. We'll go to Chancellor Johnson, please, with the next question. Chancellor, please go ahead.
Hey, Kelvin. What is something that you learned during your time at Oklahoma that you took with you for the rest of your career, basketball related?
Basketball related. I'm not sure how to answer that question. I think every coach evolves at every job. I think I was better at Washington State than I was at Montana Tech. Coaches like Ralph Miller and Lou Olson, Mike Montgomery, Don Monson. There's some great coaches in the Pac-10 at that time that really helped me just coaching against their teams. And then at Oklahoma, I think it was the same thing. The great coaches. I had I had a Hall of Fame coach about an hour and a half away, and Eddie Sutton. Roy Williams was at Kansas. Tim Floyd and Larry Eustace was at Iowa State. I probably shouldn't name their names because I'm gonna forget somebody important, and if I do, I apologize. But you learn, and you evolve. Every year, something will change for you in basketball. But I think, not to answer your question, I think the answer, though, Chancellor, is you just evolve. You work hard to learn, whether it's from other people, the way they play, the way your teams play. You're constantly challenging yourself. you don't sit down and actually say, how do I get better? But you look and say, you know what, maybe we can do this better. Maybe there's a better way to do this, whether it's on the offensive end, defensive end, late game, baseline out of bounds, side out of bounds, zone offense, whatever. There's so many nuances in the game that requires attention. But I think I've evolved, but I think every coach evolves. And at the end of the day, I'm just like every other coach. I'm a coach.
We get time for one more question. We'll go to Joseph Duarte again. Joseph, please go ahead, sir.
Kelvin, if we could end on something light here, I got a question for you. I understand you're a big Jeopardy guy, and if you looked at the board up there, what are two categories that we get the button pushing for you to maybe give Ken Jennings a run for his money? What are some categories that you just can't miss on?
Well, there's a lot of every category I can miss. Don't ask me questions about hockey. I'm not a big hockey guy. I know who Wayne Gretzky is. I've been to a couple. I went to a hockey game when I was a grad student at Michigan State, Munn Ice Arena, and I couldn't believe they were fighting and the referee didn't blow a whistle. That jumped out at me. And I knew they were fighting because I saw blood on the ice and nobody even reacted other than hit him harder or keep it going or whatever. I like American history. I like geography. Anything dealing with sports outside of hockey. I really like Civil War history, and I like to read autobiographies of presidents of the United States. I really like this. My mother got me this play set where all the presidents were standing on different levels, all the way down, kind of narrowed at the end, down to the bottom rather. And I've just always been infatuated with that stuff. My dad was a history teacher in high school. Karen and I were classmates in his history class. So I like that stuff, but I'm really not that good at it.
I think Houston's actually been a question recently with Phi Slamma Jamma.
On Jeopardy?
Yeah.
What was it? What was the
something about which team or which school was known for its high flying fraternity of basketball dunkers or something like that.
Yeah, I would have got that one. But it's amazing how many of those brilliant people just doesn't follow stuff that the common people would follow. They know stuff about the literature stuff, foreign affairs and literature stuff. I would just sit there and hold my button most of the time.